You've got to remember that this is the century of change, the century where a massive agenda was to be rammed through. So remember, when you see all these changes happening that seem bizarre, chaotic, and quite frankly psychotic at times too, then it's planned that way. It really is planned that way. Academia prattled on for the whole of the last century about the 21st century. And they called it the century of change in academia, where they would fulfill this big agenda of destroying all that was to bring in the new creation. And you were witnessing it, in fact, all the time. If you watch television constantly, you will think there's not much really wrong with society, and because you've adapted to it. You've adapted to all the changes, step by step by step, with little updates daily in entertainment and news and various other programs that you watch, because that's how it's done, until you think that it's all quite natural. Even the things that are really bizarre are quite natural. And that's how you're supposed to see it, really. Other items you're finding what's called the news today are all designed to get emotional responses, little oohs and ahs that are out of your mind in no time at all, as you're on to the next ooh and ah, or look at that cat dancing on a tightrope, things like that. That's what they put in the media today. And in amongst it, you have nothing but almost pornography in a lot of papers, actually, mixed with murders and slaughterings and things like that, which really simply reinforces the idea that you're living in some strange science fiction. That's what it appears to be to you. You're in some strange limbo state, or a bad dream even, where things are happening and it's all mushed together. And it was actually, I suppose it's more like a bad trip for folk who used to take LSD. And that's presented daily, in a daily format, as though it's quite normal. But number one, if you really wanted news, you wouldn't have all the women and actresses and budding this and budding that, with hardly anything at all, showing off all that they have in amongst the murderers and the rapists and the various clashes of different groups in society through various reasons in Europe and in Britain and elsewhere. It would be separate, so you could concentrate and think about something seriously. You can't be serious about something when you've got, I don't know whose name it'll happen to be, some model, ex-model, whatever it happens to be, showing off her backside next to a little video clip of someone filmed by a CCTV camera and knocked over by a speeding car. I mean, don't you understand that this is really bizarre? And it's not happenstance either. It's not happenstance. Look at the publications, all of them. Traditionally, people used to know what the publications were all about. Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they began to lose it again in the 70s, but people used to know, in Europe, for instance, especially, what this paper was for. It was for the right wing, whatever. And they put it once for the left wing, or whatever. And it was like night and day. Night and day. Often, they were owned by the same people through different front companies and so on. Because the same people who run the world always own all sides of things. That's how they keep control of it. Through chaos. If you create enough chaos, you have more control because you put forth the ways to deal with the chaos. And you can create banks of specialists over different areas of society dealing with it all. And have this sort of governmental or societal governmental authority over society. So you're living in a system I talked about for years that was destined to come in. And often, if you don't use the terminology, people will never catch on. It can be that simple, for instance, isn't it? It can be that simple. The top industrialists and bankers of the planet loved communism because communism is socialism. And it's an ordered society run by banks and layers of bureaucrats and civil servants, again, in all departments and agencies running over the public. And above that line, You have the true freedom of those above it all, who are way above it and their income level, who are unaffected by it all. They get special privileges above the ordinary people. And that's the perfect society for running the future. That's what they decided upon long ago. Nothing of a right wing or a left wing or an up or a down system will be discarded if it works for those in charge. And the Soviets studied as much of the West, and what worked is we all studied the Soviets. And everything's adopted into your own system and adapted into your own system. That's how it is. And as time goes on, it's worse and worse and worse, because it isn't until you go in to the incredible multi-thousands in your own countries of agencies and organizations and study groups, all living off the tax money that you provide, and living awfully, awfully well, and all kinds of ridiculous things, it seems, until you get to the top of the pyramid where all the information of the studies is fed up, and they have the complete understanding of how we tick, and how to tweak this group or that group or this element in society that's not responding to the latest parts of the agenda, or whatever it happens to be. Everything is about order, remember. Everything is about order and control. You can't have order unless you control. And how do you get control? You create chaos. You offer the solutions to the chaos, and you make sure your own agencies and departments and so on that you run will be in charge of all. You profit from it too, but then you have control. That's how you do it. It's quite simple, really. It's like getting the bankers in who keep plundering economies and nations across the planet. I should say at least twice a century. They're stepping it up now. They're due for another one. And they're not finished yet, because that's also part of the agenda as well, of bringing us in gradually into austerity, because they'll offer solutions with the next big crash as they do bail-ins and bail-outs at the same time. They're going to have both of them at the same time. And they'll offer the solutions for the next part of the system. We can't go on like this. And we've already drafted up this plan for you all to live and how you're going to live in austerity. And we have all these kind of new commissars up to manage your lives for you. But we've got to drastically change the same agenda exactly as they're using to get us to, by using sustainability, climate change and all the rest of it. Give up all your rights to live as you want to live, and live that way only. That's you. And you'll all be gradually put in your little niches, your class system, multi-class system. Really. It's not like 3 tiers, it's many tiers of class systems we've got now. And you'll be put in your own one, and you'll have your little bit of privileges depending on where you are. And if you're at the bottom, you have none at all. And that's how it's going to be. It's already coming in right now. You can see it. And that's also why the massive push to bring in so many people at once into countries. They said that even Ireland's got articles in their own papers right now about the end of their people, because there's a big plan ahead to basically overrun them very shortly, in fact, over the next 20 years or so. But this is planned this way. It's planned, absolutely. And you've got to live through the chaos as all this, as Rockefeller said before, that major statement he made, we talked about the rocking the world and forcing things in the big plan, and all the chaos that you see, and folk who are even being killed or murdered in the process, or even starving to death. That's just the eggshells. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. And that's how we're seen. That's how the whole plan is seen. For all those who watch their way of living, or their culture, or their history go down the tubes, or even living in their own countries, and people come in and they call them, they call them all kinds of rotten, nasty names, because they've been radicalized before they were even brought in, and then they're radicalized further when they are brought in. And the government stand by and allow that to happen. It's an agenda. To criticize any of the agenda, which goes under the guise of liberalism, is dangerous, very dangerous thing in this day and age, because and you can see it becoming more so. As in the old days, liberals who never ever believed in tolerance of anybody else or anybody else's opinion, they used to always scream and chant, but now they're getting very violent. against people. And they're being allowed to be violent. That's why they're doing more and more of it, because the police are being told to stay back and all the rest of it when they attack people. Recently, in fact, I think in Oxford, I think it was one of the universities in London, I think it was Oxford University, where there was a private meeting going on with people, one group of whomever it happened to be. But anyway, you see these guys wanting attention, obviously, and they had photographers ready for it too. But they stormed into the meeting, but they were dressed very much, this Antifa group supposedly, but dressed very, very much like ISIS. And I don't know if people realize the danger of this, because if you were in the group being invaded, the group in the room, with these guys suddenly storming in with a strange flag and black clothing all over the place, and their faces covered, you might end up killing them. Wouldn't you? Now, don't tell me that hasn't dawned on the people who are provoking all this and encouraging these characters to do their anti-fascist nonsense. Of course it has. And if it does happen, then they'll use them as martyrs. Well, they were just wanting to protest. No, they weren't. You don't break into private meetings, disrupt it all. That's not freedom of speech. Of course it isn't. But what you're seeing today are the growing numbers of these kind of things happening all over the place. And you aren't hearing governments come down on it at all for what it really is, because it's part of the agenda. Intolerance is getting vamped up for anybody who's not on board with the whole agenda. Of course it is. That's what's happening. And I say liberalism is the most intolerant system really ever devised. They can call it socialism or liberal. It's the same bunch running all of it. In fact, I'll put up some articles from Britain to do with Corbyn, the so-called Labour leader, and also the aristocratic multimillionaire communists in the Communist Party in Britain, who are also part of the Labour movement. There's good articles in it. And there maybe some of them are third generation people who are big industrial families who own factories across the world and had at one time in Britain too. And these people are quite adamant, these same multimillionaires are quite adamant that they should have the right to rule. You understand, it's all about power. Left-wing socialism is all about power and reality, and that the right people should rule the dumb masses. That's what they believe, the lumpen proletariat that Marx had no time for himself. And they never believe it. And socialism, communism, and so on, they don't believe the ordinary people can rule their lives. That's why they need experts above them. And that's why academia has always been on board with it. I've always found that people are so quick to alter and adjust their value system when big money is flashed in front of their faces in socialism, communism, or even do-goodism under charities, etc. And for instance, it's strange too that now Bono is being hammered after many of the charities are being exposed. Thank goodness for it. It's about time it was too, for the corrupt racketeering it really is. It's the best system to go into if you want to get rich quick. Start up some organization and pay the right people off in marketing to publish your stuff and push you, and you get grants galore, and you can live the high life and give yourself a fantastic salary. Incredible salaries, in fact. In fact, Prince Charles is just leaving one of his supposed charities and handing it over to his old footman. And it's close to £100,000 a year or something, just for that, just for being at the top of it and maybe appearing once a year. He's got many other ones too. But there are many charities out there where the people are getting they're like CEOs. They get about $1 million a year each at the top. But Bono's getting it too now, because it comes out that the fundraising is a big part of it. It's a big organization, the one he's running. And big salaries, of course, for all the people in a dropping scheme from the pyramid down as to what they get paid. And once you're into these kind of things, it's high power salesmanship to get money coming in. Well, some of these employees supposedly were pretty well almost forcing other ones, employees, into prostituting themselves to get the money in from big donors, you see. If you really want to see human nature, stop watching TV and go and look at these organizations. Go and look for yourself at these organizations. Look at you can actually do your own little surveys. You won't get too far. I mean, get far enough, it'll take so much of your time up. And look at the thousands of organizations and charities that are raking in money, often money that's from the taxpayer, by different departments from government to these charities and so on. Look at them and where the money's supposed to go. Then look into the countries that are the money's supposed to be meant for, and there's hardly any change at all. But look at the salaries of the people involved in these. It's incredible. So rather than set up from scratch some kind of manufacturing business or whatever, and try to work your way up and make something and give people, no, just set up some big charity organization if you can. Give yourself a fantastic salary, and you're like a little king, untouchable. You'll get into United Nations and give little speeches there, and you can do your preening and show how good you are. It's amazing. Life is beyond satire today. It truly is way beyond satire. And it's meant to be. It's planned that way. It's pushed that way. When you see the same agendas, pretty well neck and neck, all to do with social changes of all kinds, across the planet, being run by the same groups across the planet. Sometimes they'll change their names for different countries, sometimes they won't. Massive funding, massive pushing, all through the same academia too, across the planet. See, there's a centralized control, folks. Of course there is. And if you think for 1 minute that the people who follow this kind of stuff and actually help it all to happen at the bottom, the followers, they get nothing out of it themselves. But the ones at the top they know what it's all about. Followers are always used, and always abused. And getting back to the newspapers I was talking about too, and old days, everybody knew the right wing and the left wing and all the rest of it. But many of them too knew, as I say, that the same owners would own both sides of things. When you dug through the front companies, etc., you'd often find that. That's how everybody's managed. And they even have magazines for bureaucrats and civil servants to make sure they're kept in their little tunnels as well, and how to view things. Everybody's catered to. But TV was the greatest thing of all. And now you got the internet, of course, as well. And that's been policed as well. But beyond the far left, I mean, the people who are policing them and been given the job to police them were set up. Great history behind them, well out there. There's nothing to hide about it. And there were front groups for the old communist systems. The very communist systems that hope to get revolutions going inside America, in fact. Back in the old days. So that's what you're in, and believe you me, it's going to become more and more intolerant of other viewpoints. Because I say there's no toleration in liberalism, which is just a front, even the term's a front for the big agenda. Now, last week I touched on different things too, even to do with, I couldn't believe the Mardi Gras in Australia, and the pictures were put out there, it's quite amazing. And they also have articles about the follow-up from the next day with hangovers and then the residents in the streets there who woke up to massive smell of urine and feces everywhere, even in their back gardens and front gardens and all the rest of it, from these wonderful parties. So why, again, they'll just say, well, we need more porta potties, etc., yada, yada, yada. But we do live, it's beyond satire. See, Monty Python, it's a shame it's all gone. But even if they were here today, you wouldn't laugh because they were always showing you what was going to come. And it was to do with that. They knew. They were at Oxford, most of them, and they knew what was to come, the big agenda. They were in on the know. But that's what you're living in right now. It's a big, big change, the century of change. Never forget that. And try not to fall into the emotive topics they give you to make you go, oh, that's wrong, or oh, because it's out your head as soon as it, because we've got another one after it too. That's how that's all the media's got now to keep you looking. Is the stacks and stacks of pictures and things and silly stuff. And it's literally, it's like, what's it like really? It's like getting a person's nightmare, or actually a person's history of nightmares, and cracking them all up into different pieces and throw them all together. That's the average newspaper today with what they show you. Some worse than others, in some countries worse than others too. But that's what you're getting as we go through it all. Now, you talk about craziness too, and we're all supposed to adapt to it all. And the media is part of it. Of course the media is part of it, even the ones that are trying to get you to say something about it or even condemn something or whatever it happens to be, or just go ooh or ah, whatever. Because, of course they are. Because they want you to call even male and female by different terms, according to supposed gender changing and stuff, and even fluid. What is gender fluid? What is that? And really I don't want to know. Because why should I change rationality to suit someone's agenda? Think about it. Think about it. But here's an article from Britain. Britain really is the HQ of the old Tavistock style of bending your mind. And many of the media, the papers across the world are copying the same system. Really. But here's one here. It says exclusive, transgender activist is jailed for killing her boyfriend, right? And trying to rape shop assistant 5 days after. You understand how crazy that sounds, eh? Transgender activist jailed for killing her boyfriend. It's not her, right? And trying to rape shop assistant 5 days after being released from prison is invited to speak at the British House of Lords, you know, for the upper crust of in Parliament. This is how the media has given it to you. And you're supposed to parrot the same kind of stuff, which makes no sense at all, does it? But it says Karen Jones is a transgender activist who was born as a man called Mark Jones. Right? Mark Jones was convicted of manslaughter after strangling. Right? Mark Jones, so it's a he, right? Mark Jones, so he strangled his partner, a guy. And then 5 days after being released in 2002, Jones brutally assaulted a female shop assistant after gagging her mouth with a lemon and tried to rape her. You've got to remember too that the whole agenda rests and counts on using relativism, this term, relativity and relativism, where nothing can be normal at all, which means anything, again, getting to this flux fluid idea, that anything can change and be made to change. And the change itself, no matter what it is therefore normal. And you have to accept that and go along with it, or else. That's what you've been told now, to bring in the new society. So any chaos that happens in the meantime has to be just accepted. All kinds of chaos. And looking at Australia too, I was thinking to myself, with what's going on there, they shouldn't really have to worry. I mean, I'm going to be in Australia and then to Britain and back to Australia, but I've got to just mention this. You have the symptoms. You truly have the symptoms in different countries now. Never mind all the kind of crimes that are breaking out, the types of crimes and so on are happening in societies. You have the symptoms of third worldism coming into countries now. Is it the lack of education? Is it the lack of common sense? What is it? As countries seem to lose their ability to do basic things, basic common sense, practical things. Because here's a story from Australia. And it says the New South Wales government had an embarrassing problem with $2 billion worth of new trains that are on order. They've ordered them, I think, to be made in South Korea. And it says they're too wide to go through the tunnels that already exist. How could anybody make such a mistake? Huh? $2 billion worth of trains. And no one goes out and says, okay, what's all the data on it before we start designing this? Huh? What's the measurements of the basic? No, it doesn't occur to them. What's going on here, eh? It says, where the current trains are 2.9 meters wide, the new models being built in South Korea are 20 centimeters wider. That small difference could have a big impact. No kidding. It means new trains could collide with the tunnel walls on their way up to... This must be a genius who's writing this. He's figured out, or whoever it is has figured out, that it could hit the tunnel walls. Well, I wonder why the engineers and architects never, designers never thought of that. So it says, but Transport for New South Wales, the government body that manages the state's rail system, has come up with a cunning plan. This is how they're covering their butt, right? A cunning plan. Rather than say, oh yeah, we really screwed up. Yeah? So what do you do when the whole thing was to cost $2 billion, right? It proposes simply relaxing current safety standards. In addition, 10 tunnels built, which are already there, will be partially modified to allow the new trains to run. So it'll cost millions of dollars more, obviously. That's what you get when folk really screw up today, you know. But they never admit they're wrong, do they? Just, oh, I've come up with a cunning plan. Huh? We'll modify the tunnels. Well, if you'd done your sums right in the first place, you wouldn't have to modify the tunnels. Heads should roll here. But it doesn't happen today, does it? They all seem to get off with it, especially if they have anything to do with government at all. And this article here says, it takes a special type of incompetence to buy trains that don't fit through the tunnels. Mr. Foley said, no kidding, eh? I'm all for this guy, he's got common sense. But this is what it's all about today. You're supposed to believe in just chaos. And more and more stories of chaos as things simply go down the tubes. Aren't we? That's what's happening. That is what's happening. I mean, you also see, too, where things that used to shock people, we're not shocked anymore. It's life. We're taught, and life is becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, even our own lives. As they cut back on your health care of all kinds. And there are countries that will give sex changes on their national health systems. As they cut back on cataract operations for the elderly and hip replacements and things like that. And cut back on lots of operations that are really needed. So we truly it tells you too that once you're past a certain age, your life is worthless. Pray well. That's the message. That's the message. And they don't care. And they don't care about the life of the elderly. They don't care about the life of the young either. And that's happening too. I mentioned last week too how Canada's going forward with child euthanasia for supposedly terminal cases. Even though I've got many articles here, in fact, where they've already shown in other countries and also in Canada with Quebec that lots of euthanasia, terminal cases and so on of illnesses aren't even being reported now. And then they're just tossing the legalities aside. They're supposed to have an independent doctor who's also involved and other witnesses. And so they're starting to toss all this out the window. That always happens. It happened in Holland too. That was one of the first. So they're telling you that your life is cheap, and just make the best of it and die, and don't be a burden to society, and don't have a cost effect system of taking money away from the health system for other people, etc. That's what they're telling you. I could go on all night actually giving you lots of instances of this kind of thing happening in different countries, and Canada and Britain and elsewhere, and the States. But there's no point, because society doesn't care anymore. They're being conditioned through their little bits, their daily updates through television and through fiction, movies, TV series, and also from so-called documentaries, etc. As they train you that you're not worth as much as you think you are. You're not so special after all. All planned that way. It's no coincidence either, and I've got lots of articles on it, that as they take away the opioids for real chronic pain out of hospitals, and for people who really need it, they're offering you the pill. Take euthanasia. It's cheaper. It's cheaper for the system. You can pay into the system your entire life, whether you like to or not. It's taken off you. But when you need it, well, if it's just for you, then no, you're not going to get it. Take this pill instead. It's cheap. Go quietly, please. And there's no point trying to get any moral outrage over anything today. I really don't think that. I think people are so jaded and brainwashed, I say through television and so on, that they can't really get angry. Some might still today when it's their own relatives or themselves that are affected, but otherwise forget it. Most things don't bother people today. There's an article, for instance, here. A Romany gang trafficked slaves into the UK before using them to claim benefits which they pocketed themselves, the court has heard. This is quite common. It has been for years. So homeless people were picked up by associates of the Raphael family on the streets of Slovakia and the Czech Republic and brought to Newcastle, where they were forced to live in cellars or sleep several to a bed in cramped rooms. And the Raphaels allegedly arranged national insurance numbers for the EU nationals. How did they even get that, eh? And used them to claim benefits which they kept for themselves, the prosecutors claim. The slaves, who changed hands for £200 to £300 per person, I guess, were fed stale bread and goulash while the family of 9 enjoyed expensive alcohol and food, one of their alleged victims told a jury. The family also claimed housing benefits, and one had an SUV car under the government's mobility scheme, a court was told. There's nothing they don't know of how to claim and what to claim and all the rest of it. And the UK it's the best welfare system on the planet for folk coming in, not for the folk living there, but the folk coming in. It's been like that for maybe 30 odd years, maybe more. But this has been going on. This kind of thing goes on all the time. There've been lots of articles about similar things too. And many of these families actually in their own countries, when they go back for holidays, they have massive villas there and things like that. That's quite amazing. Because they get benefits from different counties across England especially. In the same day, they travel all over the place just collecting benefits. When that's been allowed to happen, because this is so reminiscent of articles I've been reading for the last 20 odd years, why hasn't it been stopped? You have to ask these questions. Why?